middle class tax cuts. So number one, I mean, if you're making under $150,000 a year, and sadly our teachers are, we will give you a tax cut. Property tax relief. If you're a homeowner, you will see property taxes go down. I mean, it's, again, we're talking whatever your mill rate is, when the homestead jumps up to $20,000, you can just multiply whatever your mill rate is by $20,000. So if you're here in Bangor, the $20,000 times your mill rate of $20 per thousand, that's $400. Wherever you live, your mill rate, you times it by $20,000, and you're going to get your property tax relief. And finally, our $20 million of K through 12. So, what we want to do is we want to make Maine the most attractive, competitive place for all. But we especially need to make sure that we're making it an attractive, competitive place for our youngest people. Because one of the things that we heard loud and clear when we had the Appropriations Committee meetings about the governor's budget is that so many seniors came in. It was remarkable. And they came in and said, look, your homestead that only focuses on those over 65, we appreciate it, don't get us wrong. But how do I look at my child or my grandchildren that also live in the state and know they're getting nothing? We came from the generation that we sacrificed all the time for our, we got sacrifices done by our parents so we could have a better life. We want to have those same sacrifices so that our kids and our grandchildren can have a great opportunity too. So, the combination of those three things, I think, is going to keep that teacher and those teachers wanting to be full-time here in the Orono schools. Thanks for the question.
Hi, my name is Koki Giles, and I live in Brewer. I'm a nurse at Eastern Maine Medical Center. I'm also the president of the nurses in the union in Maine. We're all sick to death of LePage and his feeling that anybody who needs help in a society, it's their own fault. That's why they are. You cannot call yourself a society if you don't take care of those who need more help than those who already have. I have no problem. I'm not one of those that I got mine, you get yours, and it's just nauseating to listen to him and some of the other Republicans all over the country. But my question is, how do we get that in there rather than his? I don't know, I'm not a politician. Do they all vote on his and then do you put yours forward as a bill and they vote on yours? How does that work? And what do we have to do to see that this one gets on instead of LePage?
We're going to be loud and persistent. We are going to have a final vote on a budget deal. And it looks like some kind of tax deal is going to be part of that budget deal. We feel like if that happens, middle class Mainers should get a tax cut, we should have property tax relief, we should invest in our kids. So I think, how do you stay involved and plugged in? Write letters to your editor, talk to your neighbors. And I appreciate you saying what you did, because we feel like we couldn't sit on the sidelines. We could not sit on the sidelines and continue to have the governor have this be a one-sided debate. So we are jumping in the game, operating under those three simple principles. And we're having a big debate. So it goes through the Appropriations Committee, it gets voted on every single elected official in the House and the Senate. The governor has an opportunity to sign it or not, but we feel like this really does grow the economy from the middle out. It does give a tax cut to middle-class Mainers in terms of teachers and parents that want their kids to stay here and have a good life here. I mentioned earlier, a parent, 3 kids, very selfishly, I want them to stay here. I want them to have kids. I want them to stay local, and I want to create a Maine that establishes that opportunity. So through this plan, if we don't get out and we're not loud about it, it's not going to happen. And that's why we're out having these public forums, and we need your all's help. We really do need your help to continue to have this conversation, whether it's through the letter to the editor, whether it's calling into the radio show, making sure that your voice is heard. We need you to be part of this public conversation, because if not, the governor's going to continue to get away with saying the things that he does. And I was raised, as I said, with values of we help each other. And when we do, we all do better. So I think that this is an opportunity to make sure that we do that. And that's why we're compelled to bring it forward.
Hi, thank you guys for coming here tonight. I don't keep up on this stuff as much as I used to. I'm reading the paper. I went to the governor's forum when he came to Bangor. And his answer for every question he was asked, what about the loss of this deduction or the increase here or the shift there? His answer for every question was, you'll have $1.2 billion more collectively in the state to spend. You'll be able to handle these added costs. So he was taking a full repeal in the money that would put into people's pocket and implying they're going to have that with what's just exactly in this budget. And I never heard anyone challenge him on that. So I think two things. One, it would be interesting to see what our budget would look like today, our $6.3 billion budget, which it's been roughly for 10 years now. It hasn't gone up in many, many years. If we were to pull another $2 billion out of it with his full repeal, or at least take, my understanding is this plan has no out-year costs, and his has a $300 million out-year hole. So I think it would be fair game to take that $300 million hole that you're going to have to deal with, and education is probably the only place it can come from, and show people today what this hole they're facing in a couple of years will do, and overlay it with today's numbers so people really see what's coming.
Yeah, I think, Joe, you really hit on a point that the governor is not being shy anymore about the $300 million hole that he's created. The last tax cut that happened, he created a hole. We didn't pay for it. That's why we got into the revenue sharing conversation of zeroing out the funds that go to our towns. This time, he said last week in his cabinet room, full of cameras, $250 million can be found in education. Again, as a parent, you can't do that. You have kids. One's right there. You can't do that. We have to invest in things that grow our economy, and our kids are top of that list.
My name is Chris Tucker. I represent the Laborers International Union here in Maine. I live in Winniport, just down the river. I've been born and raised around this area. I will say one thing, that I like the logo, a better deal for Maine, and we keep saying putting money in low-income, middle-class families. Well, I got an example of some legislation that we need to work on that maybe you need to preach while we're out there to these towns. Is you take like Kyle Ward that owns Nickerson O'Day is building our schools that are publicly funded with tax. He's getting rich off of tax dollars. But then he'll vote on bills that will shut down prevailing wages on school construction. Mike Thibodeau's putting shovels out there. How many states have bought shovels off of that? And he's profiting from taxpayer dollars. It should be illegal for that. But that's some of the stuff we need to address out there, because how many of the top 10 earners hold legislative positions? That's what we got to find out.
That's a really good question. I actually don't know the answer to that, but good point.
The construction industry is terrible. They want to keep the wages down. Average worker makes $10, $12, $13 an hour. They take the ditches, flag the roads, build the bridges. It's not acceptable. And we can't accept it anymore.
And I think everyone in this room appreciates the question, because I think we in this state of Maine have been in a prolonged recession for a long time, longer than our New England neighbors, and we believe the better deal is the beginning of a big conversation throughout our state. It's not just about tax policy, it's about how we're going to grow our economy. And we believe very strongly that we're going to grow our economy by helping the middle class, by helping those who need the help. Get more money in their pockets. They're going to spend it in our downtowns. They're going to spend it in downtown Bangor. They're going to spend it a little bit in downtown Portland. And we know that piece, they're going to put a little savings away for college or for something. But we need to have a serious conversation, because, this has been a long 5 years. A long 5 years of the governor saying a lot of things that have not been true, and they haven't worked out. Right? He's saying, we've created 20,000 jobs. Well, that is thousands and thousands of jobs fewer than when we had before the recession. We are trailing all our New England neighbors in job growth. We are trailing in almost every metric. His business, acumen is not getting it done. And that's why we felt so compelled to put together a better deal and to launch a progressive conversation about how we are going to move forward as a state.
Good evening. My name is Bev Yolenhake, and I'm the Deputy Mayor for the City of Berwick. I have just... Thank you. I just have a couple comments. One, it was to the point of how do we make sure something happens, and living in Maine, I've learned that our legislators are the most accessible people that I've seen in government and state government anywhere I've lived, and so make sure that you call them, talk to them, bug them, stop by their house. Two, I'm kidding about that stop by the house.
It works.
It does work, and it does happen. As a municipal official who finally gets a chance to look at our entire city budget on Friday, and I need to start helping our city make decisions about that, talk to us about timing, or I guess you probably can't, other than I need to impress on the importance of timing so that we get our information done so we can make good decisions for our citizens. Thank you.
So where we are, we know by the statutory timeline for this first session, we should be done by June 17th. We also know that, in order to get a budget done, and the governor hasn't necessarily signed on to too many of the budgets that he has proposed and we've disposed, we got to build in 10 days for a veto and then an override. So ultimately, the town of Brewer and many communities, all communities across the state, are going to struggle putting together their budgets with any sort of certainty. And I wish that we could give you a better answer other than we are working as hard and as thoughtfully as we can, building a better budget, something that is very different than what the governor's proposed. But we know we need to get 2/3 of the Senate and 2/3 of the House to vote for this budget at this point. And that's going to take a lot of, as many of you have heard, it's sausage making. We're going to have to take, hopefully, some of his ideas, which we have included, and some of our ideas, which we need your help convincing Republicans across the state that this is a better deal for them, to include some of our best elements so that we can put a budget together that works this biennium and future bienniums. We can't create holes that we're going to have to pay for in the back end, because we know that never works out well for our local communities. It just doesn't. We have shifted so much pressure onto local communities from the state, and some of my colleagues are fine with that. The speaker and I are not. That is not responsible. That's not what we're going to do.
I knew it was probably the answer.
I think I'm up next. My name's Kevin O'Connell. I have the pleasure of being with Bev on the Brewer City Council. And not that many chance this time. I try to be eternally optimistic. The number one complaint we get is property taxes. Constantly. I would like to think, and I try to be optimistic, that both Republicans and Democrats hear all these people that testify down there. Everyone talks about property taxes. Can you tell me, if you can give me any kind of inkling, a little bit of optimism, that there are some Republicans that may be thinking about this plan?
Well, on the state Senate side, and I'll let the speaker talk about the House, there are. There are folks on the Appropriations Committee, and I'll single out Roger Cates. Roger Cates is thoughtfully thinking about our plan. And we need more Roger Cateses in the Maine legislature, because he's there thinking about his service center community, Augusta, a lot of state employees, everyone trying to figure out how Augusta is going to make out under the governor's plan. And right now, it's not so pretty. In Augusta, they're going to lose $1 million in education funding. Revenue sharing is going to get cut. There's a lot of bad things that are going to happen to his hometown. So there is a reason to be optimistic, but it is going to, this night can't just end and we all walk away feeling, happy that we know a little bit more about the better deal. It's going to take you telling 5 people, those people telling other people, to really contact their legislators and say, I want you to give a hard look at this deal, this better deal for Maine, And I want you to think about who's going to benefit. Under the governor's plan, who's going to benefit? That top 10%. And under our plan, who's going to benefit? Communities and middle-class people. So that's where I think it's a very simple question that you would be asking any elected official right now. Who's going to benefit? How? Why? And explain to me how you can get behind something that's not going to benefit your local community.
Skip Worcester, formerly from Bangor, now Herman, and who knows tomorrow. The one thing that you were talking about is job growth, and I noticed that Seattle just raised their minimum wage to $15 an hour. I also noticed that they have the fastest job growth in the country. So how does keeping the minimum wage below the cost of living, which is going up, how does that not factor in as well as a better deal?
It does. It does. So, as you guys have heard, I'm sure, publicly, we're having that debate in the legislature right now. And cities are making the move, whether it's Portland or Bangor considering it. If the state won't do it, the cities will, because it's the right thing to do. It's part of how we grow our economy, and not only increase the minimum wage, but making sure that we are making smart investments in workforce, making sure that we are keeping the workers here and attracting new ones here. So it is definitely part of the conversation. It's not a hallmark of the Better Deal for Maine plan. This is really about a tax proposal plan, but we make no mistake, anybody in this room, our full weight will be behind making sure that minimum wage goes up.
We will be sending you more to vote on.
Excellent.
I'm Dusty Fisher from Alfond Brewer too. You mentioned very briefly workforce development. The driving force of workforce, the driving organization of workforce development is the community college system. They provide a lot of qualified workers for our people here. They also provide a lot of college students for the university system too. Community college system has been flat funded in the governor's budget. What are you going to do about that?
Well, if I could just speak to it really quickly, fight for more funding for our community colleges and really tell a story, like you did, Dusty, around the value and the place that community colleges have in growing our economy. I'll give a quick story down in my backyard, York County. North Berwick is lucky to have the anchor employer of Pratt & Whitney. Currently going through some huge job growth right now, about 500 employees coming on over the next couple of years. The reason I have to believe that they're doing that is a couple things. First of which is because a couple of years ago, through the work of the legislature, through the work of the groundwork that happened, with all the businesses in York County that did some type of machining, precision machining, came together and say, we need a skilled workforce. We need it now, and we need a training program so that when we hire our workers, we know we're getting trained workers. And so what we did as a state, we put about $330,000 towards starting the program. The private businesses put in about $250,000 in a true public-private partnership. That program is now turning out kids to go work at Pratt & Whitney, at the shipyard, and the 30 other businesses in York County. That can happen all over the state. I think that can happen in our logging professional contractors, and it can happen in our healthcare. It's that targeted type of workforce development. That is the key to the success of our economy. It really is part of Maine's comeback story, and we're fully invested in making sure that we put more in the community colleges and we do more for these public-private partnerships.
And just specifics, and this is a lot to do with the great leadership of Representative Cornfield on the Education Committee. They took a vote less than a month ago, and they said that $6 million would go to our community colleges. I believe it's $2 million the first year, $4 million the second year. And that is $6 million different than the governor. So the governor has said zero to the community colleges, and our Education Committee under the direction of Representative Cornfield said $6 million.
My name is Kimberly Hamill. I live in Louisiana and I work in Bangor. I want to follow up on what Madame Marston and Mr. O'Connor were saying about property taxes. We keep seeing our property taxes go up and up. I work hard and I stick to a strict budget, but we can't afford to see any more property tax increases. Can you explain more about how your plan will keep my property taxes from skyrocketing and how your plan will put money in my and our pockets? Thank you.
And again, I think the emphasis on property taxes tonight is a reflection of what's happening across the state. The state, for the last 5 years, has shifted a lot of our spending to local communities. It has been drying up, and it's putting more pressure on all of the services that you're providing locally, and you only have one way, truly, to raise those dollars. It's through your property taxes, it's through our property taxes. And so one of the hallmarks of our plan is $120 million per year of property tax relief going back to Mainers. First, the homestead exemption. Again, this is a little bit of repetition, but I think it's worth going back to. We're going to put $60 million into homestead exemption. Now, this is, I think, a very important piece. You know, I noticed that you weren't over 65. I'm taking a big guess now, right? So you actually are going to benefit from the better deal, because we say homestead exemption should go up to $20,000 for every homeowner across the state of Maine. The governor has made a decision. I'm not sure why, but he made his decision of only putting up homestead exemption for $20,000 for those over 65. We said that's just not good enough. We need to do better. And part of the savings of the income taxes that we have collected, we're putting into homestead. So it's $30 million per year. So that's going to help you with your property taxes. Part of the governor's plan, which we've adopted. Again, you know, those of us that just say Mark and I just, you know, all we do is just throw the governor under the bus. That's untrue. There's parts of his plan that we accept, we adopt. One of it is a property tax fairness credit. He in his plan said, you know what, we need to increase it. And we said, you're right. So it's going to be $1,000 or $1,500 for property tax fairness credit. That is going to help both seniors and those who are eligible get, you know, a larger dollar back. I mean, it doesn't go back to where the circuit breaker used to be, but we're getting closer. And that is really, really, really important. Remember also, when you don't eliminate revenue sharing, that's putting money into all of our communities, whether it's Kingfield, whether it's Brewer, wherever it might be. And when you don't eliminate revenue sharing, and in fact increase it, that is going to help pay for all the local services, which again, reduces the need for your local municipal leaders to have to go and say, we have to increase the mill rate, increase property taxes. So those pieces right there, in addition to when you pump in $20 million per year in public school funding, K through 12, then that also helps. Because if, again, you look at your property taxes, right? You look at your taxes, you know, a big portion of it is going for K through 12 education. That is going to help all of us with our property taxes. So there's three distinct ways. We really hope that we can help you and every single Mainer, you know, try to take this, you know, increase that's just been happening year to year of property taxes and flatten it and decrease it with this focused attention on property tax relief.
Hi, my name is Tim Tommy. I'm here from Warrington. The question I have for you guys is, when the federal CMS yanked the certificate of participation on Riverview, the governor appealed that yanking. Since then, we've been getting the revenue needed to keep the facility open. When they finally shut down Governor LePage's appeal and were hit with a $50 million bill, where are you accounting for that in this budget?
You bring up something that is alarming, and you're great. I mean, you're right to be cued into it. You know more than probably most people in this room. The way that I would sum it up is the governor's mismanagement is going to cost us tens of millions of dollars. CMS is our federal partner. We have to follow their rules if we want their money. That's how it works. We're not doing that. Through Riverview, our state psychiatric hospital, egregious things are happening there. Workers are being hurt. We need to do more to make sure that we're protecting the safety of those workers and the care of those patients. That money is not accounted for. I think what the governor is doing is crossing his fingers, holding his breath, and hoping that CMS either goes away or accepts the appeal. But it is alarming, it's very concerning, and it's something that we were, over the last 2 years, really raising an alarm around, and now it's kind of gone quiet. But it is, every month that goes by, it's millions of dollars that add up, month over month over month. So it is going to be a problem in the future. We don't know when that future's coming. So it's good that you're clued into it. And again, you probably know more than most people in this room around that.
Hello, I'm Jeff Oxtercamp from Bangor here, and I want to allude back to what my friend Skip Worcester brought up a few minutes ago about the higher wage. And I sort of have an example of how that would help with our budget prices too. Is I have a friend who just about 8 months ago started working as a car detailer at a local rental car mechanic shop, and he was in the business meeting the other day, and he was bringing up something, and they said, "Well, we're just the car dealer." He was talking to the owners, and we only pay you $10 an hour. Why do you have your opinions about these other things? He said, "Well, I used to own my own car business, and if I was paid the $18 an hour of a car mechanic, then I would be being able to do the issue that we're talking about." So that's why I'm saying that Maine has a great workforce, and if business owners would help reinforce their encouragement to work better, then that would help Maine all around.
And look, I think that discussion about raising the minimum wage, something that we haven't touched since 2009 in the state, and obviously federally a lot longer, is a very, very important conversation. We know that every year that we go by, that goes by, the cost of everything else in our lives goes up. And yet, we're asking men and women across the state working 40 hours a week to pay for the basics, and they can't. They can't, and that's a problem. That's a real problem. That's why we're going to drive the conversation once again around minimum wage. And don't forget that over the past 2 years, the speaker and I put a very solid minimum wage bill on the governor's desk. He vetoed it, and the legislature did not have enough votes to override him. So I'm glad that Bangor, Portland, and other communities across this country are taking that conversation to the municipal level, because again, we have men and women, probably many in this room, that are working their tails off, and they're falling further and further behind every single year.
Mr. Deacon, I'm Don Todd from Etna, and I just want to support you in this deja vu effort about expanding the base for the sales tax. It sounds like a thing I've heard in the past that got vetoed.
Yeah.
But even though the lady from Hinkville that goes to Berwick said that I can't afford more income tax, what that does, I feel, for the state, it evens out in the hard times, because right now, if I understand it right, most of our sales tax comes from housing, construction materials, and cars. So you have a downturn in the economy, we get hit doubly hard. So if we expand that base, that will take the edge off our taxes long term. That's what I'm seeing. So I applaud you in doing that. I would ask that in the future, that hopefully as our economy grows and revenues increase, perhaps you could give a tax break to all of the Maine residents on the sales tax and some type of rebate, and let the out-of-staters pay even more. And hopefully as the economy grows, we'll be able to afford that. But I wouldn't ask for that until the economy grows.
Well, thanks for the question. And so just a couple things to talk about sales tax. We haven't talked about it a ton tonight, but just remember that, under the governor's plan, he wants to raise it to 6.5% on all the things that he wants to expand. The Democrats said, you know what, we believe in the expansion, but we think 6.5%, a 33% increase is too much, and we're keeping it at 5.5%. Secondly, in the governor's budget, which we've adopted, there actually is a sales tax fairness credit. And depending on your income levels, when you fill out your income taxes, you could be eligible for up to $500 And every minute, you don't have to collect your receipts, it's just on the eligibility of your income. You could be eligible up to $500 on this sales tax sales tax credit, which I think, we're going to pay for it right now, again, under our plan. Because we understand, just like this woman shared, that it is going to put a hardship on a lot of Maine families. And we want to address it right away. We're not going to allow that to build up. And again, you would be, Mainers across the state would be eligible up to $500 for the sales tax fairness credit.
Hi, my name is Shannon Watts. I'm a resident of Berwick, and I'm a case manager for therapeutic foster children. So my question might need a follow-up. I don't know if you'll know the exact answer, but how does your budget affect youth in foster care, which means examining mental health services, DHS, and education? I include education because there are several children not receiving the support they need in order to be successful due to lack of funding. Children who should be receiving more support, such as one-on-one, certain assessments, keep getting pushed along, and unless there is someone there with a strong voice, they get ignored.
I couldn't agree more. I've worked in community-based mental health for the last 10 to 15 years, and I probably work with a lot of families that you work with. This budget will make sure that not only do we provide a middle-class tax cut, property tax relief, the third part that we're talking about, we were talking about education, but I want to emphasize the things that you're emphasizing. While we pay for all those things, we also allow for roughly about $100 million to fund the services that need to be funded. So we make sure that we're doing targeted property tax relief, targeted relief for middle-class families, investment in education, revenue sharing, and we have money left over to negotiate in the budget, because the budget deal is not done, but we're having a negotiation where we have set aside, in contrast to the governor, where his budget has a $300 million hole in it. Ours is roughly about $100 million surplus that we can make investments in those kids that you're talking about.
Jean Tassel, Bangor, 27 years. I'd like to go back to a more technical point. The governor has been pushing corporate taxes cuts partly to attract outside investment. I'd like to share my experience. What led me to Bangor was a search for a foreign company to invest in American companies. My search covered several states. Of the final short list, I selected a company located in the greater Bangor area. Of the criteria used to make the decision, the major part, of course, was the financial condition. The second one was the work ethics in that company. The third one was the backlog and the ability to generate profits in the future. If you don't generate profits, taxes don't matter, right? So, the level of the corporate taxes in Maine was part of the many features we looked at, but it was really a side issue. And I would like to see more action debunking this myth. If we cut corporate taxes, we are going to attract more foreign investment. This is not the way it works. And again, I've been in Bangor, that was 27 years ago.
I think what you see reflecting this plan is we're not buying it. Our plan really shows our values in that if you invest in the middle class and you ask the wealthy corporations to pay their fair share, we all do better. I'm glad you shared your experience and your story, because it's the one that we've heard over and over and over again as we've traveled around the state. The work ethic and workforce development is where we need to put our dollars. That's how we're going to grow our economy. So it's refreshing to hear that it worked for you a while ago, and it's still the case today.
And just on that note, again, what the governor is doing is taking that corporate tax from 8.93 and over a bunch of years getting it just below 7. We're just saying let's just keep it as is, because like you said, like you 27 years ago made that investment, came to the state of Maine. We're seeing that across the state, and a big part of our plan is instead of trying to have a race to the bottom, trying to have no income tax. There's 9 states out there. If you look at those states, their unemployment's higher than Maine. Their average incomes usually are less than Maine. Their public education is in shambles. So I don't know why we're using that as some sort of pillar that we need to follow. Our plan wants to invest in Mainers here, now, that are putting in the hard work growing their businesses, and that's what we're going to do.
Sean Yardley, here in Bangor. Thanks for being here. I'm glad you're here, and I know you're working one side of the equation, but the other side of the equation is really important, and people have alluded to that. You know, and Maine Care expansion was a good idea 3 years ago, a good idea 2 years ago, it's a good idea today. Because people don't have insurance. It's just, I wish that, just like the governor hangs on to welfare reform and spends all his energy on that, which I think is a red herring, having worked in the field for a long time, I wish the rest of us could focus and hang on to Maine Care expansion and not give up on that idea and force legislators. You know, you were talking, you know, Senator Cates being reasonable and being possible. But it's the full Senate that has to vote on the override. And so it really, I think we need to do a better job of not letting go of good ideas and pushing them and continuing to remind people of the cost of not doing things like that. Thank you.
Sean, I just want you and everyone in the audience to know that we are not letting go of Maine Care expansion. We will have full votes, and everyone across the state of Maine will have another opportunity to see how their local elected officials vote on something that would cover